Has all the AI spending that's in the news been worth it? Maybe we get an idea tonight from these reports. And then there's the Fed. Drama surrounding Jerome Powell's final meeting. There were 4 members of the committee who dissented with the decision in some form, the most we've seen since 1992. Doug Flynn's here, Flynn Zito Capital Management. The decision was no decision on rates, and there was only one dissent on that. The other 3,
right.
Doug, seemed like they were upset about the Fed kind of saying that, well, at some point we might cut rates in the future. In other words, the guidance that they give. What do you make of all this, Powell's last meeting?
Yeah, interesting. I think it's really a little bit less about the fact that they weren't going to cut, more about the message. And the message was clear. Inflation's still an issue. The labor market's cooling. It's not cracked, but it's definitely cooling still. And they have a political independence test going on. But I think what's interesting is that while there's a 0% chance, that's what the market was estimating, it also is a less than 10% chance of a rate cut for the rest of the year. And what I noticed is in the December expectation, actually for the first time in a long time, there's a slight expectation that rates could rise. And so I think that's where this comes from, is that they don't want to get locked down to only possibly cutting rates.
Right.
Because if inflation stays up here and oil prices are up again today, they want the option to be able to go the other way if they need to tamp down inflation.
Whereas they stay and Powell leaves, but not really leaves. He just won't be chairman anymore, which was also interesting. I'm sure the president will love this. Here's Jay Powell about staying on as a governor today.
I've said that I will not leave the board until this investigation is well and truly over with transparency and finality, and I stand by that. After my term as chair ends on May 15, I will continue to serve as a governor for a period of time to be determined.
So they got rid of the criminal investigation, I believe, and keep, as an internal investigation. So it sounds like he just wants to be careful. Maybe his lawyer's been speaking to him or something. I don't know. But does that affect the dynamic for Kevin Warsh coming in, do you think?
Slightly. I think that Warsh still has to convince enough people to go with him if he does want to cut or if he's going to be truly independent. But this just gets to the whole argument of that this is not an apolitical organization. This is seriously a political decision that's not really common for this to happen. And so now, look, if he's just going to sit on there and just vote against every rate cut for no reason, he's not doing himself any favors with his already mixed past on how well of a job he did. So we'll see how it plays out. But and maybe he won't stay the full amount of time. But it just reeks of politics, which is what they're not supposed to be about.
We'll watch the closing bell ring on Wall Street. Probably go over by a few seconds speaking to you, which is fine. There it is at the New York Stock Exchange. What I'll ask you in closing here is tell us what to expect after the bell, okay? So it's Amazon, Alphabet, Meta, Microsoft. My point is, these are huge companies. Maybe they tell us something about whether all this spending on AI is paying off for them. I don't know.
I think they might, and it's also a big issue because some of these have been in the news about the cuts that they're doing to the employees. And while it's mostly in the middle management scenario, they're really talking about how they're focusing and shifting all that money that they're going to be saving by cutting out management more into AI. And so we're back to, is that going to translate into better longer-term earnings? That's what they're going to make the argument for. That's why they need to go that way. So they're not cutting because they're doing a bad job or in trouble. They're cutting because they want to redirect those costs, because anybody who runs a business knows that their single biggest cost is always the people.
The people,
and yes. So that's what you're going to see there. And we'll look for some of that news there to see if it's going to be directed in the right way for better long-term growth, which is, I think, what they're looking to do.
Thank you, Doug. The numbers on